My opponent's activist agenda and lack of experience would make Wisconsin less safe and our economy less stable. You'll often hear her say, "We can do more." Just one example is my opponent's position on mining in Wisconsin. The legislature has set the guidelines. The EPA, the DNR, and the Army Corps of Engineers will all do inspections and issue permits. There will be strict regulations for any potential mine. But my opponent says the AG should be yet another hurdle. Why? Not based on the law, based on her own political agenda. That's a threat to Wisconsin's economy, because you know her activism is not only going to affect the mine. If you work for any size business in Wisconsin, you should fear her do more agenda. None of them, including my opponent now, has devised any plan to deal with the problem. I have a comprehensive plan called Stop Heroin. It stands for Support and Training for Opiate Prevention. This will require a multifaceted approach. I not only have a plan, though, I have a track record that proves I can carry this out. Waukesha County, under my leadership, leads the state of Wisconsin in prosecuting drug dealers who kill. And I've led the charge to create drug treatment courts and to get funding for drug treatment courts in Wisconsin and for many different prevention efforts through my statewide work. Thank you.
Mr. Schimel, thank you very much.
If I could.
If you could, absolutely.
I actually have rolled out a comprehensive plan relating to the heroin and opiate epidemic, and Brad knows that's true. Well, certainly the Attorney General is not a legislator, and I know that Brad likes to constantly try to label me as an activist, because I'll say that there are things that we can do more. We've got a lot of really good laws on the books, and consumer protection is a primary example where we have really good laws on the books. And, you know, I rolled out a plan a couple weeks ago where I talked about a need to go after these for-profit colleges who unfairly target low-income students and minorities and don't deliver on the promises that they make. And so oftentimes these students will end up with no degree, no job, and a boatload of debt. And he called me an activist for saying we could do more to protect our consumers. Yet Attorney General Van Hollen just yesterday filed a lawsuit against Everest College, which was an example I gave of a woman who wanted a criminal justice degree. She paid $25,000, got no degree, no job, and now the college was holding her hostage to even get her transcript by having to pay more money. And I'm glad that the Attorney General agrees with me that there's more that we can do for consumers, even though Brad doesn't seem to agree with that.
AG Van Hollen did an investigation and then issued charges. He's been recognized as a leader in investigating the for-profit colleges nationwide, but he didn't announce that in a press conference. That's not how an ethical prosecutor does this, by announcing a hit list in a press conference. You do an investigation and you announce charges against someone when you file a criminal complaint. Ms. Happ sent out an email in the middle of that trial to prosecutors statewide that I saw and many others saw that demonstrated she was over her head. And the reason she lost that trial wasn't the jury's fault. She didn't lose. She got it reduced to the lowest possible homicide on a lesser included. She got in that position because she wasn't prepared. She didn't know the law well enough of self-defense.
Ms. Happ, rebuttal.
Well, first of all, Brad, in terms of the Worth case, you know that your representation of the email and that case is not true. And no matter how many times you say it, it doesn't make it true. The Worth case, there was an email, and by the way, this is something that all prosecutors do because we rely on the assistance of other prosecutors. That's what we're there for. But at the very end of our trial, my judge decided to give a homicide by negligent use of a dangerous weapon instruction. And my email to Brad and others was asking whether that was actually a lesser included and whether he was entitled to that instruction, which he was not. When we take our oaths, we hold our right hand up and we swear to uphold the United States Constitution. So to answer your first question, yes, absolutely. It's incumbent upon the Attorney General to make sure that when a law is passed and there is a constitutional challenge to that law, determine whether it passes constitutional muster. And unlike Brad, I don't think the Attorney General is a robot. And we can look at the last 3 Attorneys General who have not defended certain laws when they believe that they were unconstitutional. Originally, Brad said that he would not have defended the Domestic Partnership Registry. Then he changed his mind and said he would. And he, in fact, said he would defend any law. And when he was asked about a ban against interracial marriage, he said he would be obligated to defend that law. That seems absurd to me. Then he was asked at our first debate whether he would defend the law regarding campaign coordination. And he said he'd have to think about it. So with me, I will always talk straight. you will always know where I stand. And there are certain laws that if they are unconstitutional, I would have the courage and the independence to refuse to defend. First and foremost, I talked about the same-sex marriage ban, which we've now spent millions of dollars defending a same-sex marriage ban that's now been found to be unconstitutional. I think that's an obligation that I owe to the voters and to the taxpayers to have the independence and the courage to say that when a law is blatantly unconstitutional, I would not defend it.
When you take the oath of office, you don't raise your hand and then cross your fingers and say, I promise to defend the laws, I promise to defend the Constitution, except the ones I don't agree with. And it's misleading to suggest that if the Attorney General takes a pass, that the law will go on undefended. The state will have to hire outside lawyers at the cost of hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars. There's nothing robotic about the brilliant lawyers who've offered defenses from our Department of Justice. And the problem isn't too few gun laws. The problem is that certain parts of the state are not enforcing them adequately. It's why I've proposed a program or a plan to help Milwaukee County deal with their severe gun violence problem. And criminals don't fill out forms. Making it more difficult for law-abiding gun owners to own and carry their guns will not solve the crime problem.
Now, Brad just said criminals don't fill out paperwork. That's not true. Since the Brady Bill was enacted, nearly 1 million attempted purchases by felons have been prevented. That doesn't mean they can't figure out some other way, but any impediment, any obstacle we can put in place to prevent people from purchasing guns who shouldn't have them, we should put that in. Now, Brad also says the problem is prosecutors, that people don't enforce the law of felons who possess firearms. It's also not true. The Milwaukee County DA's office since 2000 has the only dedicated firearms enforcement unit and the only dedicated gun court in the state. They refer 40 to 60 cases a year to the feds, and they issued 208 of 270 referrals for felons in possession of firearms in 2012.
I have a specific plan that will help the district attorney's program. Right now, we're under the Department of Administration. That was a political mistake back in 1990 when we became state employees. We should have gone to the Department of Justice, but we're in the Department of Administration, or the Department of almost everything. We're a very small part of their priorities, and they don't help us. As long as nothing's on fire, they don't really do much for us. I have a plan to move the DA's program over to the Department of Justice, and that plan has the support of the District Attorneys Association Board on which I serve.
Thank you, Mr. Schimel. A 30-second rebuttal.
Very briefly, in terms of moving the district attorneys under the auspices of the Department of Justice from the Department of Administration, that sounds like an activist to me. Brad also wants to move the Lab of Hygiene over to the Department of Justice. And he has a lot of plans, but he doesn't articulate how he's going to pay for those plans, how we're going to adjust for the personnel, and what we're going to do to fill the void. So it's great to have a plan, but you've also got to be able to get in first, see what's working, see how it's actually going to work, in reality, versus just saying that we're going to move entire groups of people under the auspices of Department of Justice.
What inspired you to go to law school?
So I went on to law school, and I had big plans. I had worked as a messenger in the state's biggest law firm in my undergrad, and I thought, I'm going to go to one of those firms. But in law school, that wasn't to be, and those firms didn't hire me. I even cut my hair and shaved my mustache, but they didn't hire me. And so instead, I ended up in a clinical program in law school called Legal Assistance to Institutionalized Persons. And I found, helping people wasn't always doing the big cases that ended up in a Supreme Court report, but sometimes was helping the little people who needed help. And then my second year, my second summer, I wanted again to get one of those big high-paying jobs, and again, that wasn't to be. I ended up in the prosecutor's internship program, and I landed a job in the Waukesha DA's office as an intern. In my last year of law school, I tried 7 jury trials as an intern, and I fell in love with being a prosecutor, and I've been doing it ever since. My opponent and I have very different philosophies regarding the role of Attorney General. She's an activist who has promised to dangerously pick and choose which laws she likes and which laws she doesn't. She has announced a target list of people she intends to sue. Meanwhile, I've announced a comprehensive plan.
I'm not a career politician. I wasn't handpicked by my party. I won a tough 3-way primary to get here. The people chose me. I have a proven record of working with Republicans and Democrats alike to protect our citizens. And I won't bring a partisan political agenda to the Attorney General's office. I'll talk straight, and you will always know where I stand. As your Attorney General, I'll work my heart out every day to do what's right and to represent you, not any political or special interests. I'm asking for your support and your vote. Thank you.